What's up, everybody? Paul here from the Hoops Crew, and today we are talking about Charlie Curnow once again. The reason being that he apparently wants to be a Cat more than any other club, which is really interesting news. But of course, it poses a big question for Geelong and the other clubs that are vying for his attention. I mean, how do you afford him? Like, how do you put up something that Carlton's going to be satisfied with? And honestly, it's going to be a really tricky one. So we're going to try and break this one down in this video. We're going to spitball a little bit. This is very much an off-the-cuff conversation in terms of how do we actually get this done. I'm certainly going to be working out a bit of a pitch on the fly with you today to make this happen, because not only is there the Charlie Curnow situation, but we've all seen the video I put up recently, and we know the talk about Rowan Marshall and how does that deal get done. So then how do you manage to pull in Charlie Curnow as well, who's going to command even more income, but more in terms of trade and draft capital? It's a really tricky conversation to have, and I'm looking forward to going through this one with you, and we'll try and work this one out together as a team. We'll do, it's going to be ugly. But anyway, before we get to all of that, let's take a word from our sponsor.
The Hoops Crew Media Network is proudly sponsored by Cyril Cook Florist. Visit them at shop 1211 Leather Street in Breakwater. Phone them on 035 222 2244 or visit their website at www.cyrilcookflorist.com.au and use the offer code GOCATS in the voucher field at checkout to get 20% off your next online purchase.
Thank you, Cyril Cook Florist, as always, for your ongoing support of the Hoops Crew and all we get up to. Now, let's get through the news here and get ourselves up to date with what is actually going on here involving Charlie Curnow. So first, here's where we're at. Carlton spearhead Charlie Curnow hasn't officially requested a trade away from the club, but is believed to want a fresh start. We know this. He's spoken to the club and declared he wants to go. Hasn't nominated a team yet. Thoughts on that in a moment. Beachside clubs Geelong, Gold Coast and Sydney are believed to be the teams that Curnow would prefer to move to, albeit with a vast level of difficulty given he's under contract until the end of 2029. The Suns have remained quiet, although it's understood that they are keen on bringing the two-time common medalist to Queensland, but not at the expense of any academy prospects such as Jed Walter and Ethan Reid. The Swans and coach Dean Cox met with the key forward before he jetted off overseas, but will not use the likes of Errol Goulden, Isaac Heaney, or Nick Blakey in negotiations. And Geelong, who almost always finds a way to get a deal done, struggled this year to move enough pieces to welcome the local product. There's a bit of context, remember. He's a Geelong local. However, with that in mind, from Curnow's perspective, veteran journalist Damien Barrett said that the Blues tour would prefer to remain in Victoria before contemplating a move to the Gold Coast or Sydney, in that order. In Charlie Curnow's ideal world, Geelong, Gold Coast, Sydney, Barrett said on Triple M. I expect those three clubs to somehow get involved. I don't know how Geelong does it. Of the three, that's the hardest to get done, but that's where he wants to go first. But one of the other two, by the close of play by trade period, by October 15, will have executed a deal to get him. That's a lot of confidence in terms of he will go. There must be some sort of understanding from Barrett and presumably others who are also talking about this, that while we haven't worked out what club it's going to be yet, Carlton perhaps have accepted that this is the reality that they are facing and that they're going to have to move him on. Some other piece of context before we dive into this. Cats have already declared, Shannon Neal spoke about it in a press conference, that Andrew Mackie had pulled him aside as they were walking through the race at some point and just made sure to point out to him that he won't be going anywhere. He will not be transacted. He won't be part of any sort of transaction. But then we can kind of look at what Geelong's got available here. We can, of course, compare that to the Gold Coast, who've got a plethora of first-round picks, but they do have an academy player they are chasing. You've got Sydney, first-round pick as well. And there's the likes of Will Hayward and those sorts of guys that were of interest to Carlton last year. I know that for a fact that they were interested last year. I know there was a meeting at in some hotels in the city between Will Hayward and Nick Austin and some key Carlton people before he ultimately signed on with Sydney. If we look at what is going on here, Geelong doesn't have a lot to work with, right? Pick 18 is very, very little. And we do need to have something for Rowan Marshall. We are looking to chase Jesse Mellor as an academy pick. There's some really complicated elements to this trade period for the Cats. The one thing that potentially works in our favor here, and also keep in mind, that's pick 18. We could have pick 18. We are now one of the final two teams in the running for the premiership this year. Pick 17 or pick 18 is where we are going to land at this point in time. And that is before Let's not lose sight of that. That is before any free agency compensation, before any father sons or academy picks are made that will push these teams down. That pick 18 could become something like pick 23 before you know it. So that's a little bit of perspective as well. And of course, all those others will start to slide and move around as picks are kind of bundled together to offset an earlier selection for these free agency and father-son picks that will come through. So don't worry too much about pick 36, 54, 72 onwards. Think more about pick 18 and what's going to go on there. The other piece of context is, though, you can now trade multiple years in the draft. So on the table for any team this year is their current 2025 pick, is their 2026 pick, and is their 2027 pick. We can now trade 2 years in advance, not just the one, which does open up options. For Carlton, and let's kind of really lean into the Carlton story right now. Carlton, they've lost Jack Silvani. They're quite likely going to lose Curnow. There's rumblings about Sam Walsh and other players who are a little bit disgruntled, not to mention some of the age profile of some of their players, like Cripps and those guys who by the time, another 2 years from now can be closer to the end than the beginning. And so the profile of this list is going to rapidly need to evolve. And in that, you've got Tasmania that, assuming everything gets there, and I know that's a really tricky situation for them at the moment, but assuming everything that is planned at the moment remains to be the case, Tasmania is going to be scooping up picks in the draft in 2 years from now. So if you are a team that is on the slide, like Carlton seems to be, like Essendon continues to be, and several other clubs who are kind of on the way down, you need to fill your boots with picks ASAP. And so this could be a scenario here where Carlton needs to take not whatever they can get, but maybe they need to entertain the, and we've also heard that, the 2025 draft isn't necessarily the strongest, but the 2026 is looking pretty good, and we haven't cast an eye too far to 2027 yet. But that maybe Carlton needs to look at 2026 in particular, maybe even 2027, pending what happens with Tasmania. But I would honestly look to fill my boots with 2025 and 2026 picks. Load up on those. Do what Richmond has just done in this last year, where they basically filled all of the key needs. They went straight down the spine and got key forwards, key defenders, and a ruck. They then topped up with a bunch of midfielders as well. And now they've got obviously it's all speculative. They may or may not work out for the Tigers, but they've now got a young core who is going to stick around. They're going to have 100,000 people almost every week screaming out their names. Going to be very well supported in a great system, and they're going to be on a quest for relevance very, very soon. Carlton, falling down at the moment, potentially needs to accept their current fate and go, we're sliding, we're going to cop some losses, and we're going to fill our boots with as many picks as we can. And so you take, maybe pick 18 is a viable thing. Maybe Geelong needs to pull in a third party, and as in another team. Maybe this is part of a multi-team trade here, a three-way, four-way, maybe even more complicated trade, where Geelong offloads a player to a club who needs it, gets a pick or multiple picks in return, offloads that to Carlton. Maybe the pick that the player that Geelong sends to, I don't know, I'm just making up clubs here. Let's say Richmond, for example. The player that Geelong sends to Richmond then forwards the pick on to Carlton. And all of this starts to build a package together that allows for Charlie Curnow to come to the Cats. But again, the big complication here is the Rowan Marshall one, because it seems like St Kilda is driving at a first rounder as well. And so we're going to have to find ways to bundle these things together. Geelong's 2026 first rounder will need to be on the table if Curnow's to be a part of any deal, I would assume. And again, we can assume, based on where the club is at, that probably still means it's pick 15 through to 18, sort of that region. It's going to be very difficult for the Cats. We know that Shannon Neal's are not on the table, so we're not giving them a key forward in payment for a gun key forward either. We're not trading away our future for the sake of Charlie Curnow, which is hugely important. And then the other bit of the story here is the Cats are still continuing to chase big names, especially in the midfield for next year, where the likes of Zach Butters get involved and are associated with the Cats. So how do they have enough there to be able to package something up to get him? It's a really, really messy situation. Good luck to the Cats. But it is why, despite the fact that Charlie Curnow wants most to go to Geelong, it does feel like Gold Coast and Sydney are ahead of them in the queue. They've just simply got more to offer. So Cats fans, let me know what you think. Charlie Curnow, will he get to the Cats? What club will he go to? Apparently the Pies are throwing their name in the ring, though I just don't see how that's going to happen because he wants to get out of the Melbourne bubble from all reports. There's Geelong, Sydney, Gold Coast and Collingwood that have all been connected. There's also the very strong possibility that he remains at Carlton because none of these teams can provide what Carlton requires for a trade. So I want to hear your thoughts. I will also say that without, and I guess to maybe further support what Damien Barrett is saying, Sydney and Gold Coast have been out of the running for a week now. Collingwood are now out as well. Charlie Curnow hasn't nominated a club yet. As of when I record this, I should say. He hasn't nominated a club yet. It makes Barrett's reporting look more legitimate. So let me know what you think anyway about this whole situation. Can the Cats get it done? What do they need to offer? How can they make it happen? What players do we need to lose? How does this look if Geelong was to hypothetically get the deal done and still manage the Rowan Marshall thing at the same time? Throw all your ideas in the comment section. I'm keen to hear what you've got to say. If you've liked this video, drop a like on it. Subscribe to the Hoops Crew on YouTube and check out all the content that myself, Ben, and the chaps are putting together. There's lots of awesome stuff there, so please enjoy, check it all out. If you enjoy that, consider checking out our Patreon. That is patreon.com/thehoopscrew, where you'll get early access, extended, and exclusive content delivered to your email inbox. It costs $5 a month to get all of that, and there's a 7-day free trial to see if it's for you. You'll find me at Paul James Games. That's on Twitter, Blue Sky, and Instagram. The Hoops Crew, you'll find at the Hoops Crew. And until next time, Charlie, I look forward to seeing you in the Hoops next year. Hopefully. Remain Geelong strong, everyone. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you later.